Well, it seems if you've been looking at social media for at least the last few weeks, probably longer, depending on who you're following, that the strategy of libertarians voting for Trump at being part of the MAGA, MAHA, Trump coalition in 2024, going into Trump's victory and then taking back the White House in 2025, which did start out well with freeing Ross Ulbricht, but then since then has led to such a collapse that not only are a bunch of MAGA people, of course, leaving and upset, or some of them are just doubling down and saying this is what they supported all along, which is, of course, silly, and we'll get into that. But many libertarians, including yours truly, have expressed that not only are they willing to admit that things have not gone the way they wanted, but we actually just regret the whole darn thing and we were fooled. But is that good enough? Do we need to make some kind of penance? What do we do with libertarians and those who are just liberty minded who took a gamble on Trump and now we think that we've got that wrong? What did we get wrong? That's what we're here to talk about tonight, live here in the LCI Green Room. Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm, of course, Jacob Winograd. I am the host of the Biblical Anarchy podcast here at the Libertarian Christian Institute, part of our Christians for Liberty network. And this is our live show, the LCI Green Room. Tonight's guest is, and actually, if you didn't see on social media, I'm going to be doing his show as soon as we're done here. So we're kind of doing just a very long conversation, but across two platforms. But to get things kicked off here, we'll be talking about what I just said there in the opening, probably get into some adjacent topics as well, but this whole sort of experiment with the Mises Caucus, the Libertarian Party, and just libertarians in general supporting Trump, voting for Trump, trying to coalition with the right, with the new right, with MAGA, with the RFK people, doesn't seem to be going as well as we thought it would. Well, and in my case, at least, it caused me to rethink my initial calculations in the first place and think that I got a lot wrong. But of course, there are some who are willing to forgive and forget and say, let's move on and join hands and fight for liberty together. And some that think that we need to spend some time in the timeout box. And infighting in libertarian circles is, of course, nothing new. But we're here to talk about this new particular chapter in that long-running saga. A little bit tongue-twisted tonight, but I'm here with my good friend Brent Freeman. I'm going to go ahead and bring him up now, host of the Aiming Up podcast. Brent, how you doing tonight?
Doing well, Jacob. Happy to be here, man. Excited.
Yeah, of course. Brent, you've been on here a few times, but just go ahead and just reintroduce yourself, the Aiming Up podcast, and just your background. And you got to stick your flag in the ground, man. You know, what flavor anarchist are you? What flavor libertarian on you? Pick you gotta, even though we're supposed to be individualists, we have to, we have to pick sides and factions.
Yeah, just because you said that, I'm going to say, no, I'm not picking a side. I don't like labels. You can forget all your labels. I consider myself a philosopher first and foremost. I care about what's true and what's virtuous and good in the world. And that's it. That's the entire focus of Aiming Up podcast. So thanks for the shout out on the pod. That's what I do primarily. What I do for the day job is I'm kind of like been 30 plus years in like big tech. So I work for one of those horrible multinational corporations that does terrible things, and I'm trying to exit by virtue of the podcast and my other venture, which is a narco syndicate clothing company. So narcosyndicate.com, pick up some cool I think it's cool anyway, merch. But those are my two endeavors right now. I got a third. I'm sort of kicking around with Rob Yates right now, so stay tuned for that, maybe, if we get it worked out. But
okay.
That's the big one. That's a really cool idea, but I can't quite talk about that one yet. So
okay.
So that's me in a nutshell. That's what I do. But long-term libertarian, I've been in this space like mentally for decades. But I just kind of jumped in the podcast space like 2 years ago. So I'm relatively new entrant here.
I remember when I first started out, and man, you're doing a lot better than I think my first 2 years, man. I don't even think I was at half the following that you're at. So you're absolutely killing it. People should definitely check your show out. I mean, even with the following you've picked up, you're still criminally underrated in my opinion, and you've had some really just like big and interesting guests on there, even though you would say you're a libertarian podcast, but you're not really just solely a
No.
libertarian podcast. And you have a lot of interesting guests on to talk about, religion and philosophy. I know you had was it Lawrence Krauss? Is that his name?
Lawrence Krauss.
Krauss, which that was an interesting
An Epstein
conversation.
Island visitor. Yes, I
Yes.
did have him on.
And then you had and you'll have to help me remember his name. The one you guys talked a little bit of religion. I follow him on X. I just forget his name.
Well, that's a tough one because I've been on I've talked to religion and consciousness and that spirituality things like across a whole wide variety of hosts. You got to narrow it. Is it recent?
It was I was messaging you about, or I posted about it actually, and I said people should check it out. I'm just blanking on his name. He's got a big following on X.
Is it Tyler Tote?
Is it Tyler?
I don't know. Tyler's got at least 150K. Like he's got, or maybe two. No, he's 250K.
No, it wasn't Tyler. No, it was a guy who was he's an atheist, and so he was. You guys were talking about religion in the midst of your conversation, and he was Dylan. It was Dylan Altman. That's what it was.
Dylan Altman. Yeah. Had him on a couple times.
I was like, I know this guy. I'm listen. I'm stupid. Like I'm horrible with names. I barely remember my kids' names and my wife's name and my name. Sometimes it's just names are just like, all the space that was supposed to go for memorizing names is now filled up with Rothbard and random Bible verses and just tons of Ron Paul memes. So names have gone they're lower in the priority list. So it takes me a while to regurgitate those back up.
Yeah, by the way, I'm going to pause because I think speaking of criminally underrated, Dylan Allman is feloniously underrated. Like he's an incredible writer. He's got a fantastic Substack. He does incredibly deep thinking, and his writing is just absolutely amazing. I disagree with him a bunch. We talked about it on the last episode together. But boy, he's a deep thinker and a brilliant. He's brilliantly eloquent. Like he reminds me of a lot of Derek Wills, just with the written word. Just fantastic.
Yeah, Derek's another great one. But yeah, I will. I mean, you probably doing something with Rob that you can't talk about yet. But Rob's another good one who, he he is the latest to come down with the mental illness of thinking I can fix the LP, right? Like I can fix her, right? So we might talk a little bit about that tonight. But I wish him luck. I like Rob. I haven't had him on the show yet. I probably should. Although while he's doing an LNC chair run, it's like, man, if I bring you on, do we have to talk about the LP? Because I don't know. I'm in this weird love-hate relationship with the LP, which I feel like we'll get into in the course of this conversation and on my show and on your show. But I'm sure we've all seen it, and I'm not going to name names. There's people I like. There's people that I like who don't like me. Then there's people I don't like. All sorts of libertarians who are at various stages of this sort of like where we're at in terms of the mass exodus of libertarians from, I guess, mostly my camp or my former camp. I don't know. I don't particularly ascribe to any camp except mine and like, me, myself, and I and LCI and Christianity. But I guess just like, because I haven't denounced the Mises Caucus, and like it's not enough to disagree with the Mises Caucus for some people. You must be actively anti-Mises Caucus.
That's so woke,
and I'm
man.
not. And I'm not going to do that. Like, I'm not going to go on social media and play the game of like attacking Angela and attacking Michael and attacking Dave and just all this stuff. Like, cause it's just unproductive and it's not me. And I'm still friends with those people, even where I have varying levels of strong disagreements with them. But I'm not like active in the Mises Caucus anymore. I haven't been for a while, really since 2023 when I stepped down as an organizer. But I did still support as a late entry the whole voting for Trump and trying to leverage him to gain concessions. Early on it looked like maybe we were getting something. I think you had me on your show shortly after Ross was free, and it was like, hey, the LP finally got a win. Maybe like there's some productive things happening here. And then since then it's just like one of those, it's like a really bad British sitcom where things just keep getting so much worse than you possibly could expect. And it's painful to keep looking at it. And you're just like, is this, it's like, we have gotten so bad that it's at least, and maybe I'm wrong, right? Maybe it's my first question. Like, even where you were sitting, right, as someone who did not support that strategy, who doesn't support voting or politics at all, the general rule of thumb, uh, did you even think from your position that Trump would be this bad across the board?
Nope. Nope,
Okay.
he has surprised me at every turn. I thought it would be bad. It was actually funny. I'm not sure if you saw this, but I retweeted a video clip from Brian Esco's show. And this was before the election. And I was, or no, it was before the inauguration, after he'd been elected. And I was giving predictions of how I thought it was going to be. And I was trying to be fairly charitable. Brian is a Trump dude. And I'm like, okay, I'm trying to be balanced. I'm trying not to go completely unhinged, but everything that I predicted came true. But way worse. Except for the Ross. I did get the Ross thing right. I did not believe that Trump was going to honor his promise with respect to Ross, and that's why when we did our show together, I gladly ate that humble pie because I did not want to see Ross continue to be imprisoned, or my friend Roger Ver, like any of those folks that are part of the sort of the state attack on freedom. Essentially, when you boil it all down, like I'm very happy that sort of happened. But it was, boy, what a trade-off. Like people like to say, like, oh, well, if we don't do this, then the Democrats are going to gain power. I'm looking at this and I'm going, I would give anything to have Joe Biden back again. I'm not kidding. I'm
Yeah.
not being
No.
hyperbolic. Like, I would do anything in the state that he's in, whatever mental shape he's in right now, just put him back. Just put the guy back and it will be 1,000 times better than Trump.
He was so incompetent that he was almost a more effective sort of like monkey wrench in the machine than Trump, who's just at this point a useless idiot, or he's a useless idiot for us, a useful idiot for everyone around him. But it's funny you bring up so yeah, I mean, first of all, that is, I guess, the silver lining is that Ross wasn't just he didn't just have his sentence commuted, which was like the original promise. He was given a full, like, unconditional pardon, which is absolutely amazing. And yet, yeah, everything since then, I think is worse than I could have possibly I mean, worse than I did possibly imagine it. Ironically, I think one of the things he's probably the least he's bad on immigration, but it's also this weird thing, right? Because on one hand, I'm not down with the kind of like large show of force with all the mass deportations and whatnot. And yet I also like to kind of point out to right wingers to go, for all the show of force, he's barely deporting
It's
higher
not,
than Obama numbers.
yeah.
So it's kind of like it's like, it's bad, but it's almost like it's bad for the immigrants, probably within parity of what it usually is. It's worse for us, right? The American citizens are getting the brunt of the crackdown on immigration, unfortunately.
Well, we also got the beta test of Palantir. This is the worst thing for me with Republicans, the sort of like pro-immigration, or sorry, anti-immigration type of Republicans that are pro-ICE. They're like, yeah, they're cheering for this stuff. And I'm like, don't you understand? They've taken a class of people, this underclass called undocumented or illegal aliens that you don't care about. And you basically, as a group, said, screw them, do whatever you want to them. And the federal government is rolling out this type of authoritarian beta test of their software, their Palantir database, like all this mass surveillance tech. And then these morons are cheering for it. And it makes me sick. I'm like, oh my God, how do you not see what's happening? Because it's so plainly obvious.
Right. And then the weird thing too being, because I think one of the calculations I made for why I supported Trump wasn't just about policy. It was that I had been kind of seeing for, I guess at that point in time, roughly a year, maybe longer, a sort of build up in the sort of relationships, communication, and coalition between libertarians and these various groups that had sort of coalesced around Trump on the right. You had the RFK people, you had the original diehard Trumpers, you had some just, they were a minority, but, some of the Tea Party Republicans and, Justin Amash, Rand Paul, Massey Republicans who just weren't LP guys, who were still in the GOP. They were, of course, kind of like trying to rally around him. And then, some like alternative media people who were just kind of like, I think kind of more in hindsight, just sort of like riding the wave, probably more grifters than anything. But it seemed like at the time that the right was sort of like willing to say, even if we're not going to say libertarians are right on everything, they were kind of like, okay, you guys are kind of right on these 2 or 3 really, really big important issues that we want to see changed, which was war, which was like the Federal Reserve and like fiscal policy, and things like that. The managerial state, the deep state, the intelligence agencies, that they were not to be trusted. We knew they were still going to be bad, like pushing for tariffs and immigration restrictions. But I was like, hey, like, I think there's some ground to be made here that if libertarians sort of get involved, continue to try to push them to be better and offering at least a little bit of tacit support when libertarian issues are being put into the sort of forefront and being proposed as policy suggestions. When you think about like Doge and whatnot, at that point in time, it was like, okay, I'd like to see that, because maybe this could be the birth of something. And even if what I said back then was, even if Trump falters, right, and goes back on his promises, well, then at least a lot of these people then will finally admit the GOP is a lost cause, and they'll be ready to look more into libertarianism, more into opting out of the two-party system. And because we've built these relationships with them and we supported them, they'll be willing to listen to us, right? So, egg all over my face now as I said that. Obviously, that's true for a small minority of people, right? But a large majority of the people from all of those camps have just sort of morphed into becoming even more of a cartoonish version of Trump derangement syndrome, but in reverse. And just making MAGA look more like a cult than it ever did before, which, it had aspects of that, but now it's like cartoonish levels of that. That's part of my biggest regret. I'm wondering what you think about that, because like, even if, beyond the politics and policy level, like, I really thought that if people voted for him because he said, I'm the pro-peace president, and like, I just shared today, actually, I didn't share yet, but I took a screenshot of a Truth Social that I saw that he shared near the end of Biden's term. I'm gonna pull it up here just to read it quick. So this was on August 5th, 2024. And he said, stock markets are crashing, job numbers are terrible, we are heading to World War III, and we have 2 of the most incompetent leaders in history. This is not good. Now, what's funny is that like everything he's saying there is like exactly what's happening right now, as we're saber rattling with more war with Iran after the 12-day war, surprise, surprise, didn't actually lead to long-term peace like they sort of suggested it would. So it's just like, this is what people voted for him for. Now we got gas prices back up. We got more. I think the global stage, other than maybe the ceasefire in Gaza, which who knows how long that's going to hold, I think things are worse now than they were under Biden. Add in Venezuela to that too. I mean, it's like the whole world's on fire now. It's absolutely insane.
Yes, you said a lot there. So let me back up just slightly. The thing that I heard you say that I think is actually a smart reason to vote for Trump, and I think this might be a positive outcome of this administration, is that there's got to be at some point, and I continually, oh, I continually underestimate how stupid the average person is. But there's got to be at least, and I'm sorry, I'm not meaning to be like arrogant about this. This is just a fact, right? It's like that George Carlin's saying is like, think of how dumb the average person is. Now you got to realize that half of them are dumber than that. Well, that's real. And if people would just come to that understanding that, okay, well, if he had the opportunity, if he had done everything he had promised, right? We're bringing Ron Paul and Vivek, and we're going to have Elon and Doge, and we're like all the things that they teased everybody with. He wouldn't have saved things, but it would have, made a dent, and maybe we could have kept the game going much longer. But I'm looking around and I'm like, how do you see this world that we're in and be like, this is fixable? The United States government is fixable. The United States of America, that experiment, it's not a failure. Like, I don't see how anybody who's being honest with themselves can look at this and say, next time I'm voting for the other guy and it's really going to fix things, right? Like, I don't see this happening. I think that might be the best thing to come out of this Trump administration, just so thoroughly. Maybe it's not going to get everybody, but maybe a large enough swath of people that just be like, this doesn't work. This thing that we're trying to do here, it's broken. It's not fixable. It's not salvageable. The United States has got stage 4 cancer. There's not a surgery you can deploy. There's not a radiation treatment. There's no chemotherapy that's going to fix it. You are Steve Jobs at the end of your life with pancreatic cancer. This thing is dead. It's just a question of when it actually, kicks the bucket officially. And I think it's coming a lot sooner than people think. So I think that might have been a smart way to look at it. It's like, well, here's a last shot. And if this doesn't work, then it's clearly there's no way forward. Oh, did I lose you, Jacob? I have lost Jacob. I'm unattended. I'm a child unattended on someone's stream here. Lord help me. Oh, and we're still live too. Cool. Well, hey everybody. I was just talking about the futility of voting. The American system is completely broken. You're not going to be saved by somebody. There's no politician. There's no leader that's going to come and save you. This whole thing is over. And unfortunately, I think there's going to be a lot of pain and suffering ahead. We've got a lot of death and destruction in front of us. We have economic catastrophe about to rain down, and it's definitely not going to be good. So that's a bitter pill for people to swallow, because people really do want to believe that all the things that we were taught in elementary school. When we put the hand on our heart and you pledged allegiance, and you're told that your vote matters, and this is a democracy, and there's some sort of fairness and liberty and justice for all. Like, that's all nonsense, guys. All the people that run everything are complete psychopaths. They're all insane. They're all evil. And I think America generally right now is just sitting there looking around at each other going like, what are we doing? Nobody has a single clue what to do about this. We've got the Epstein disclosures. Everyone's looking around going, okay, so our government's controlled by pedophiles, and we're covering it up, and we don't really care about victims, and little kids getting blown to bits in school halfway around the world. Like, that doesn't matter. It's a rough thing to comprehend. It's really, really sad. But hopefully, people will look towards the ideas of liberty. Maybe they will, consider actually what that means to be free. It really means you have some responsibility to your neighbor, you have responsibility to your family. That you have to become a productive member of society. You can't live at somebody else's expense. You got to treat others well. You have to honor your word. Hey, Jacob, I was just monologuing in your absence.
I'm sure everything you said was absolutely brilliant.
I don't know. I was just kvetching, but no, I was just saying, like, I think there might be an opportunity here to be like, this is not working. So what does work? I got to amity eventually by saying, like, look, this is not black-pilled. It's not black-pilled to say the thing that obviously can never work, we're going to abandon that, and we're going to try something different. So I'm trying to sort of spread some positivity and be like, hey, guys, don't be dumb. Let's just accept reality. This is not getting fixed. This is not getting better. Okay, so what are we going to do? We have some options.
No, I 100% agree with that. I think that the extent to which like there's disappointment with all of this, and perhaps I, in my calculus, was overly optimistic with how many people would turn on Trump, and I thought it would be this, like, there'd be some diehard loyalists and whatnot, but I thought a lot of people, if things got not even this bad, just like my expected worst case scenario, but like I thought if things got this bad, for sure, people would. And there are people who have kind of, but they were the people who were probably not that far off from me anyway, right? Who were like, well, I'm already pretty much libertarian and I'm supporting this to see if anything good happens. Not a lot of people who were like, RFK people, or who were part of that core original MAGA base, have taken the time to really self-reflect. And it is sort of frustrating because it's like, the irony of that, like when Trump's in office, suddenly Democrats sound like constitutionalists. And I'm like, listen, I think you would disagree with this argument I'm making, but agree with the spirit of it. Because I've often said that, like, listen, man, I don't know the path to a free society, right? And the best thing we can do might be just to work on freeing ourselves, which we've talked about and probably we'll talk about more. But I don't know, like, I think the first step, it's kind of like that we were in a Spaces like the other week. Or no, it wasn't a Spaces. I was asked this question on a free show on Smarter Than a Politician. And they asked me if we should support the like calls to audit the Fed. And I was like, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Tell them to audit the Fed, get it through Congress, pass it, and then watch them not do it. And then watch everyone, hopefully, right, suddenly become completely incensed to be like, no, absolutely end the Fed, and we're not even waiting for Congress to get permission this time. I think that there is something to this idea of we need to make a massive movement in this country of people who are committed to getting Washington, D.C., to getting the federal government to just obey the darn Constitution. Sorry, I'm a Christian, so I'm not going to say damn. Sounds so stupid.
Obey the you just did.
Obey that dang darn Constitution, right? Whatever. But it's like, and then when that fails, which I think that's what we're doing right now, is we're seeing in live time and in real time that we cannot enforce the Constitution on this government. Not only should that black pill us on the Constitution, it should black pill us on the whole entire American system and realize that it's a house of cards, it's a sham. We're not ruled over by ourselves. We don't have self-government. We don't have we don't even have government by legitimate representatives of the people, right? Even if you believed in that fairy
you
tale.
Can't. And this is the thing that I like to just slam home every chance I get. So pardon me for interrupting. But this idea that you can claim that you're delegating a right that you don't possess yourself to a third party representative is the most insane thing I've ever heard in my life. Jacob and Brent, we can't steal. Even if we have a neighbor in need, I can't go to my other neighbor, and put a gun in his face and say, open your fridge, dude. I got this guy. I can't do that. I can't do it myself. And if I don't have that myself, I can't delegate it to a third party to tax me, man. The Constitution, and I get so much flack for this. It is stone evil. It is like the most evil document that I can even imagine. To believe that there is actually a separate class of human called government employee that gets extra rights to commit murder and assault and kidnapping and theft. And we're just sitting here like, yeah, we love this thing. We're going to hand on our hearts and we're going to sing Lee Greenwood to and talk about how it frees us. And it's like, this is the document that enslaved everybody. And it should be held with just derision and hatred and contempt. But it's not.
So I hear you on that. I could offer pushback, but I feel like we should save that for later, probably more on your show. That's cool. A slightly different tangent. Mostly agree. And I think the Constitution, at the very least, it showed to be utterly useless or worthless, right? Like, I love that Spooner quote that the Constitution has either been powerless to stop the government that we have, or it's been complicit in creating it. So it's definitely one or the other. There's no ways around it. So even if you give the charitable interpretation, which is that it's just inept, and that even if the people, because I hear this all the time from constitutionalists, and it really drives me up a wall, because it's kind of like victim blaming. It's just like, well, the Constitution doesn't do anything by itself. The people have to enforce it. And now there's almost like this like glimmer of truth there, right? Where like they've almost seen the light, and then they just do a 180. Like, yeah, you're right. The Constitution does not enforce itself. A people capable of actually being so organized, so committed to liberty and to freedom that they could like really enforce the Constitution of the federal government, which if we're to really enforce the Constitution of the federal government, I think would lead to the abolishment of the Constitution via the Second Amendment, ... in Minecraft, just for transcript and internet YouTube tracking purposes. But beyond that, it's like, well, if the people are that committed to liberty and organization that they could even conceivably try to enforce the Constitution and then like fail because the they're all a bunch of criminals and thugs, and it's basically the mafia. But that people doesn't need the Constitution anymore. They can just self-govern. So they take it in the complete wrong direction, and also they don't realize the Constitution is a barrier, right, to liberty. That essentially, like, it does grant the people in the government these supposed special rights and privileges that at the end of especially the whole we can interpret our own our own limiting contract, right? It's like Brent, we're going to sign a contract, that you're going to give me 40% of your income as long as I'm giving you the things that we've agreed upon that I need to give you, and that you think I'm doing a good job. Now, who defines if I'm doing a good job? Well, I do. I'm the one that defines it, decides if I'm following the contract or not. You don't have any say in it. So, I mean, that's, again, one of the major problems in the Constitution. All this to say that, like, I feel like doing that, and sorry, I know I rambled on here for a while again, but I think the point I'm trying to make is that kind of like what you said, like, I keep on thinking that if we keep on letting people try to use the Constitution to hold the government accountable, they'll eventually realize that's not going to work. You can't hold these people accountable with or without the Constitution if you decide that you're going to give them a bunch of power, a monopoly over, services over in a particular area from the get-go, because you've already shackled yourself.
Yeah, you're in a no-win situation. There's not a way out of it, and this is the tough part about it is that the way the government's set up. If you read the founding documents, it's basically they say essentially, if you don't like it, come shoot us. That's literally that's the remedy, and people don't really like that. People don't like the idea of civil war. Like, our country went through that. That was terrible. We lost so many people. It's just
Well,
left
not even
scars.
again. I don't want to get too, you know, uh, I mean, I'm already on probably some lists. I don't want to venture too far down this road, but I think you and I would agree that, like, we'll just talk abstract. I don't think even non-anarchists would agree that, like, especially if you're an American, right? There has to be a line in the sand where the people have a right to overthrow the government, institute a new one. If there's anything worth a damn, sorry, I actually did curse there. If there's anything worth a darn in the American ethos and founding, it's that line in the Declaration of Independence that basically says that anytime, government stops being an instrument to secure the liberty of the people, it's no longer legitimate, and the people should overthrow it and secure a new one. I think that means securing, you know, government through self-government, market forces, all that, not through a monopoly. But like, um, but yeah, beyond that, not to dive back into the Constitution again, at some point, like, I do want to default to trying to find ways to freedom that don't result in that, because A, revolutions that rely on violence to overthrow an oppressor are historically kind of dicey. Like, as much as we've kind of spent the last 20, 30 minutes dogging on America and the Constitution, in some ways, at least at first, that was a more successful experiment in that than most of the rest of human history, where oftentimes
For sure.
revolutions overthrow and then you end up at least on par, if not worse than what came before, right? So I would prefer to find ways of always, just because of valuing human life, and because I think that it's just more likely to work out if you have some kind of natural evolution, and eventually, like, the government should become, like, obsolete. Like, it should just effectively over time lose power and become just sort of thought of as this, like, antiquated, uh, uh, like, kind of like how at least people here in the West view slavery, where it's just, like,
Mhm.
unthinkable, where they're just like, what, people used to have contracts to own people? Like, how would you even do that? Like, that's absolutely barbaric. And, like, it's just, people wouldn't even entertain it. I think for the most part, other than like 10% of the population, I think we've kind of developed that way, at least towards racism, where people are even gonna be like, what, you think that this other person or group of people are inferior because of, like, their skin color, and they're inferior and aren't, deserving of human dignity and rights? Like, get out of here with that stuff. I think that's the majority of people in the West have come to that conclusion, and I think we have to get to the point where we get there with the idea of the state for a free society to emerge. But I want to bring this back to the Trump thing, because I think where I just went is kind of where we're going to go on your show a little bit and down that in some of that territory. But how do we do that? I think you see that people like me kind of entertained this Trump stuff, at least in part, hoping we get some policy wins in the short term and thinking it would kind of create some positive opportunities for growth in this coalition. It hasn't panned out. I guess as far as it pertains to me, I guess I regret it, because not only did it not work out, but then it kind of feels like for me, it's twofold. It's not just because I'm an anarchist. It's because I kind of like my entire brand and podcast is being a Christian anarchist. And now all this stuff, and listen, I mean, voting is fake and stupid, and my vote didn't. If I had not shown up to the polls that day, if I had not even like endorsed him and had that viral 23 million viewed post that Elon retweeted, Trump's still likely, is going to win, right? So it's not like I feel responsible, but I feel like I do feel like some people, again, I don't want to name names, right? There's a couple people in the movement, in the party, who are not ready to forgive and forget, at least when it pertains to me and Dave and several others.
Oh,
and
I've
they've
seen
said
them.
something, and they've said something, and like I read their comments, right, and their posts, and they've said some things that I think are at least somewhat fair in consideration, that like, if you messed up this badly, then you need to take some time and reflect and be like, what did you get wrong? And I think to that end, it's like, well, I think that's what I'm trying to do. But I think I want to do that kind of in a public, just as much as I made a public calculation to support him. I want to make a public calculation to be like, and have conversations like this to be like, well, what did I get wrong? I don't want to make that mistake again. And I don't want to lead people down that mistake again. And I don't want what Trump's doing to be conflated with, what I'm doing, which I almost feel like I didn't anticipate that danger. I think that's one of the people have asked me, what do you think you got wrong? And I think some of it was kind of just like risk assessment, but I think the fundamental thing I got wrong was just, I don't think that when you vote for someone, you're necessarily like then responsible for everything that person does. But I do think that because of this sort of statist apparatus we live in, the people will at least view you as being like, you consented to this. And that's damaging, especially to someone like me with the kind of mission and message that I'm trying to promote. And I think I overestimated my ability, or even the potential possibility for someone like me to be able to navigate that and not have it be something that people look at and think that there's like glaring contradictions between what I say and what I do, at least in that instance. So so anyway, there's more I could say, but I'll stop. I'll shut up now and let you talk something.
No, I like the way you're going about it. 'Cause first of all, I think you're being too hard on yourself, because I watched you before the election. Say you're not like, I'm jazzed about this, guys. Like I'm on the Trump train. You weren't Gunther Eagleman out there, man. Like you had an honest assessment. You laid your cards on the table. You said why you were doing it. That's why I'm really glad you're doing this in retrospect too. Saying like, okay, cool, got this wrong, and I'm in real time lay out my thoughts and sort of be open with people about what I think I got wrong, and engage in a conversation about it, even though it's sometimes shitty. And I've seen the comments that you get. It's really, really terrible. I don't think you should be doing that to people when they've said like, hey, my bad, I made a mistake. Like that's a wrong time to just pounce on somebody. That's divisive and not helpful at all. So I think that you've done the right thing. And I think you're being way too hard on yourself. I worry. I not worry. I feel bad for you, because you are that Christian brand. And it's like you've entangled yourself with a potato file and a warmonger and people. So all these horrible things that he's doing. You kind of like hitched yourself to that wagon to some degree, even if it was tacit approval or tacit, whatever the vote might be considered. And I get that there's different reasons people vote, and I don't really. Like I said, I don't think it matters for number one. Number two, people like, hey, I do the defensive thing, and I think that, I'm going to vote for something I think is maybe going to result in a better outcome. Like, fine. Like, I have no problem with people voting. I don't think it's smart, and I'll say I don't think it's smart. I don't think it's ethical in a lot of cases.
But there is a difference between just showing up to vote and then what like people like me and Dave did, I think, where we made like these kind of even if they weren't, I'll grant you, like I wasn't like, all right, boys, Trump train, ride or die. Like I was never that guy.
Yeah.
But I still made a public endorsement, just like Dave made a public endorsement. I think that there is a bit of a difference between just voting and making a public endorsement of a politician.
I agree. And I think there is some responsibility. And this is where I think about this a lot. The words that I say, I try to be intentional about it, even though sometimes, especially I'm on X, I'm posting some smack. I try to at least be thoughtful and intentional, because I do realize that as you grow, particularly to your level or Dave's level specifically, like you have a bunch of eyeballs that are watching you, and you have people that are taking cues from you and like might be like, yeah, I like that guy, Jacob's awesome, I'm going to follow his lead. I think there's some responsibility there for sure, because it's not just one vote. At that point you could potentially sway, I mean, depending how big you are, like entire swaths of the country. And I think that is something we should be sober about.
And even if it doesn't affect the outcome that much, it still affects people's like political and, in my, at least my belief system, their spiritual trajectories in terms of what they're thinking, right? Because I can't guarantee every person is going to sit there and listen to like my full, like, 2 hour, actually, no, I think I did like 4 or 5 podcasts, even like a debate going over my decision, right? And it's like, okay, people aren't going to see all that. They're not all going to see that. Like I was approaching this with great trepidation and nuance. In fact, I kind of early on had some early icky feelings and like warning signs that like so many of the people were just like, oh, I can't believe you were ever on the fence, and like, welcome, and just assuming I was one of them. Like, yeah, go Trump, MAGA, save the country, all that. And I'm just like, I don't know, like I'm not really on your side. So, but I think that's the problem, is that like there's this cult mentality on the right, and even if you want to, it's to invoke a Lord of the Rings metaphor. It's like even if you just want to, you use the ring a little bit, and then that's kind of all it takes, right? For people to sort of then associate that like you're now down with everything else that's going to come, that you're part of that team. And that isn't really the message I want to give with my platform, at least, right? And I do, and it's like, even though I said I'm not putting hope in Trump, I'm not like expecting this is going to, I don't know. I was trying to couch it, but then it's like, okay, but if there is sort of like, I've thought about this, like, well, if I obviously thought that it would do something, otherwise I wouldn't have been public about it. So it's like, I have to, I don't know. I think there's something to like, and I appreciate you and others defending me publicly, but like, I don't know, it's not even about me. It's like, I think there is, even if I think some people are being a little bit unfair to me personally, I do think there's something in general to like, yeah, like the people who got this wrong, we should, it's actually funny. Bob Murphy said the other day, he's like, I don't care you voted for Trump. I'm just tired of hearing you like,
saw that.
Bring it back up. And I'm like, okay, I get that. And sometimes I feel like, okay, am I just being annoying about it now? But I don't know, man. Like my conscience dictates that like I really screwed this up, and I do want to get to the bottom of why I got it wrong. And I want like, when there's a couple people I know who are kind of like not super shitty with me, but they're like, listen, man, like, okay, we forgive you, but I don't know if we trust you yet. Right? How are you not going to fall for it again? And I think that's a really fair question, right? Like, because it's not just me. There's people who I love. Okay, there's Dave, there's Tom Woods, there's Liam McCollum, there's tons of people from like the Mises Caucus side of things. The Eric July, who I brought up, I think earlier pre-show we were talking about him. There's people who I think are like fantastic libertarians and messengers and people, but they also got this wrong. And they, to their credit, with like 1 or 2 exceptions, that list I just said, have all pretty much come out and said, nah, screw this. We're not down with this anymore. And they're calling Trump out, and they're calling out the GOP and MAGA and the whole coalition, and saying that like, you guys are a bunch of sellouts, and you like the boot just because it's Trump doing it, and all that. And that's good. And I think what you and others are saying is true too, where it's like, well, we want people like me and Dave and all these others to be like, hey, we voted for Trump, and we're now calling for him to be like, impeached, dethroned, whatever. Like he's completely betrayed the things that we said we were going to support him for, that he said he was going to do. And I think that's important and needed. But I also get internally with the Liberty movement, it's like, okay, fine, glad you've seen your mistake, but also like, are you going? And I do think I don't know if you saw. I think you did see this. I commented on Dave. Dave made a post. I love Dave. Dave is a friend of mine, but he kind of made this post. I think a couple posts, kind of hinting at like, well, the only hope is like Massey 2028 or something like that, and and kind of like getting this the getting the base. It's kind of like, well, we have to just do it again, but not around Trump. We got to get that same base of people around the same coalitions, but around someone better this time. And I was like, first of all, do you hate Massey? Because asking him
That's
to
what I
run,
always say.
asking him to run is like asking to put a. You're like, listen, they shot at Trump. What do you think they're going to do to Massey, man? I mean, allegedly. Okay, with Trump, it might have been theater. With Massey, they won't miss this time. You know what I mean?
For sure.
That's my thought. But secondly, it's like, I don't know, man. Like, at what point is this just sort of like the like we're how much do you have to see before you're just ready to realize that the GOP is a lost cause? Say what you want about the LP, right? Whole different conversation. But if Ron Paul couldn't do it, Rand Paul couldn't do it, Thomas Massey, Justin Amash, and then this whole influx that the Mises Caucus and Angela and Dave and all that did with inviting Trump to the Libertarian Party and getting all these promises and now we're back. Like I saw this post the other day. I'll end on this. I know I'm ranting, but it's just a lot to get out. It's like someone was calling out Eric July because he had like made this post calling out like a bunch of traitors in like this administration, and they brought up his post from like a year and a half ago where he was praising all these people, and it's like, yeah, man, like I don't know. At some point, I just feel like, how many times are we going to keep trying this till we realize that like trying to change the GOP from within, trying to use the GOP to push for liberty, like I don't care what person you put behind it. Listen, if Thomas Massey runs, I will support him as far as like, I hope he goes and does what Ron Paul did and wakes up a bunch of people. But that's like the ceiling, man. That's the absolute ceiling of what Thomas Massey can do if he runs, Republican or Libertarian, is wake a bunch of people up, which I think he can do without running for president at this point, just with the social media landscape.
Yeah, man, you hit the nail on the head with this. And this is the thing where, and I posted this, by the way, too. I'm not sure if you saw my post, but I was kind of like, and this is not meant to be, targeted toward anyone in particular, but I'm like, and it's also not to be self-aggrandizing, but frankly, I get a lot of things right. And this is one that I got right. I think I get a lot of other things right. My record's pretty good. If you got it really catastrophically wrong, like 18 months ago, 14 months ago, whatever it was, and you might just want to consider that the people that got this right might have gotten some other things right, and might want. And I'm kind of at odds with some people, not like seriously, but we have some friction in certain pockets around certain topics and stuff. And I'm kind of like, man, like I'll put my record up against a lot of people. And if I got all this stuff right here, where, a year ago you were calling me crazy, and finally you come around, you're like, okay, you're actually right. Like maybe this is happening again. Like maybe us pattern recognitionists are picking up on something here. Like maybe we're seeing something that you're not seeing. And when you go to do that Lucy Charlie Brown with the football thing, hey man, I'm sitting here saying Lucy's going to pull the football away, and you're backing up to take another run. Like Thomas Massey's not going to fix this, even if they let him survive to get to the White House. He wouldn't fix anything. This thing is not fixable. And that's the thing I'm trying to drive home to everybody. It's like, and you're not voting your way out, man. No one's coming to save you.
And the base is not like, I just think Dave and others are getting it wrong, where they still think that maybe it's a large part of the Republican base that's kind of closer to us than Trump. Like, no, man, like I don't see it. Like they're just
commies, dude. Like the rank and file Republican, they're straight commies now. Like, I'm sorry. That's just the way it is.
They're completely happy to spit on the Constitution, to literally change on a dime on any issue, as long as it's just about beating the left and not letting the Democrats have power. And listen, I think to give some credit, I think it's a psyop. Like, I think to some extent Trump wasn't as bad, although I still think Trump wasn't as bad first time around. Some people have tried to say I need to
Oh
look into this
boy.
more,
Yeah, you do.
which
Oof.
I have reading I have to do. I haven't done it yet. Uh Carrie
Carrie
Wedler
Wedler.
sent
Love
me
her.
a Substack she wrote on this, and I have yet to fully dive into it and read all of it yet. So I'm willing to be schooled on this, although I think it's kind of a compared to what thing. It's like, I'm not saying Trump was good in 2016 through 2020. Also, I should really say I think Trump 2016 to 2019 wasn't that bad. Obviously, COVID, absolute failing grade across the board. Before that, I guess still a failing grade, but I just thought compared to everything else, he was just not as shitty as, at least in my lifetime, Bush, Obama, Clinton, etc. Biden. So, but I kind of forget where I was going with that. I guess the point I'm just making is that, uh, yeah, I don't think that the base is trustworthy. Um,
Well, so they have
they've
no
changed.
principles. I had
Right,
Adam
exactly.
Johnson on my show, and he educated me because I really didn't get the populist thing until I talked to him. And it's like I think a lot of it I'm just handicapped because I do have such strong principles, and like I can't imagine going through a world to where there are no principles other than the team. Like it's just being on the team, that is the principle. That to me doesn't even compute, it like breaks my brain. But now that I know that after talking to him, I observe it, I'm like, oh, okay, that's what's happening. These people don't have any principles. There was a time I think it stopped or started to change between Bush and Obama, somewhere around there. Before that time, you could talk to an average Republican on the street, and you kind of knew what their general take was on things. It's like, oh, I'm a limited government constitutionalist, and I want a balanced budget, and I want, like, there was just things you knew about them, and now if you talk to any Republican at any given time, they're you can't triangulate at all. And even if you talk to them 2 weeks prior, they might be a completely different human being and just a completely different set of issues. And that's a difficult thing to even like make sense of. Like, how do you even make sense of something called the GOP or the modern Republicans when there's like it's just this giant Jello Borg of nothingness? Like it's very weird. It's disorienting.
Well, and I think we can maybe end on this before we hop over to your show. But I think if I was going to offer, I guess, an explanation, not necessarily a defense, but an explanation for partly why I think, uh, not just me, but I think even more so guys like Dave, guys like Mike, guys like Eric July, guys like Tom Woods. I think a lot of them, and I get where they're coming from. They are worried about this idea of, they use the phrase like ideological possession, I think it's more accurate to call it ideological paralysis, where it's like we're so concerned about being pure libertarians that we end up kind of like not acting in the world and not doing anything to influence politics at all in the right direction. And it's kind of a like, well, if we don't want to have just like civil war collapse and we want something like a gradualist, incrementalist process, then don't we have to kind of try to gain some victories in the here and now through some kind of like, you know, political engagement, which might, mean some small compromises on the path to, uh, good, better, and better, and et cetera, repeating it over and over. And I guess they thought that, like, well, this thing with Trump, even if it's kind of like, yeah, there's not a lot of faith in it that it's going to like be hugely, hugely successful, but maybe at least on these couple things we'll get some wins, right? And I think even now they're just like, okay, but what are our other options? I think that it's kind of a lack of faith in any other option right now. And I think it's kind of and I get this, and I think it's really tough. I don't say this with judgment because I'm guilty of it, but it's kind of falling prey to the propaganda and the fear mongering. Um, because it's not even propaganda and fear mongering. It is kind of like, listen, this stuff isn't sustainable, right? Like, this empire is not sustainable economically. It's going to collapse. Uh, and however long it does take to collapse, in the meantime, how many more body bags are going to get filled domestically and internationally? And so there's this kind of like, you could call it a panic, or at least like a high sense of urgency, right? Like a high time preference that can kind of dominate the calculus, just to be like, well, we don't have time to kind of build counter institutions. We don't have time to kind of do agorism. We don't have time to kind of do this multi-generational, evolution through education and raising of families and whatnot. And like, we have to do something to at least stop the worst atrocities right now. And the LP strategy was tried and failed, and so the GOP is all we got. And I think that's kind of what drives people like Dave to be like, our only hope is Massey 2028. I don't agree with it, but I can I understand what's driving him there. I just think that like it's a misplaced hope. It's like, I get why you would listen. It would be great to believe that that might work. I just think that all the evidence shows that it's not going to work.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I'm an empiricist. I look at this and this whole argument against, or argument for incrementalism. Like, we're just going to roll back the government a little bit at a time. It's like, okay, if you've ever rolled back the government at all, I might believe you. But this thing goes one way. In aggregate, we have fewer freedoms every passing day. We have worse and worse economic conditions. Our dollar is being destroyed left and right. There's constant war. Like, this is moving one direction. We went from the smallest government in world history, the experiment at 1776, to like the largest, most tyrannical government the world has ever seen.
And that saying from Malice, I think it's Malice who coined it, could be wrong, who said conservatives or Republicans are just progressives driving the speed limit.
That's it.
I don't even think that's true anymore, man.
They're going faster.
I think they're going faster. I honestly think that there's I know on spending this is true, and it's probably true in so many other ways, even if there's exceptions. I feel like government's expanded more under Republicans in my lifetime than
it always does. It always does. Think about Bush, right? Yeah. Bush absolutely exploded the deficits. Reagan before him exploded the deficits. Trump, I mean, hell, like I keep talking about this until I'm blue in the face. Trump has added 26% of all the federal debt that's ever been accumulated. And he's done it in like 5 years. From 1776 till 2026, 26%, over a quarter under one president. That's insane, man. They're expanding this. It's getting worse, not better for Republicans.
No, I 100% agree with that. I think we're kind of well, I guess, is there anything, I might read some comments here before we hop off and go on to yours, but I guess, is there anything regarding this sort of Trump thing and the decision for people to vote for Trump, whether that's mine or in general, that I guess you want to make like a closing thought or comment on, in terms of just like where we're at now? And I guess like focus on like the liberty movement. Like, what do you want to say to maybe both camps here? What do you want to say to the people who got it wrong about going forward? And what do you want to say to the people who got it right about how to deal with the people who got it wrong, in terms of like, like, I get wanting to hold us to account. But I guess it's kind of like when you're in the foxhole and, shit's hitting the fan, it's like sitting there and being like, I don't trust you. Like, I don't know, maybe you can't afford not to trust us at this point, or at least you can't afford not to, I don't think you can afford to make us all enemies. But I mean, I guess that's a little self-serving, but what are your thoughts?
I mean, I was just, as you were speaking, I was thinking the first thing popped in my mind was be kind. Right? Like, just be kind to people. Try not to be a jerk. Like, us fighting each other is not doing any good. And I know that you thank you for stepping in, by the way, and smoothing over a disagreement I had with somebody. I was like, it's so wild. I got blocked because I'm trying to defend somebody in a thread. And it's like, that's how bad it's gotten, And I hate to see that. I don't want to see people that are in the liberty movement or even adjacent, liberty minded in any way, whatever you consider like that sphere, attacking each other, because it doesn't do any good, right? Like, matter of fact, it's super, super negative. Like, we have to resolve our disputes. Clearly, we can have differences of opinion. Now, you and I have differences of opinion. Like, everyone's got differences of opinion. It's how you resolve those that matter. And if somebody legitimately makes an error and goes back and says, "Hey, man, I screwed up," like, that should be the end of the discussion. Like you can maybe say, like I've done, like, "Hey, maybe you should trust the people that got it right. Maybe you should listen to them more. Ask them questions about how they got it right. How did you see this coming and I didn't? Cool. Let's have those conversations." But most of the time, it's people wanting to dunk on somebody, like, ha ha ha, and I'm going to shove it in your face, or like, do you honestly care about liberty at that point? Like, do you honestly think this is important? Because that's what everyone claims to me, that we have these fights because it's so important. It's really, really important. The whole world's at stake. But it's like, if it was that important to you, would you be sort of gratifying your ego doing this petty squabbling? Because, like, I would argue not. I don't think those people actually believe that it's as serious as it is. That's my take.
I'd pretty much agree. But we're through some of the comments quick, and then we'll hop over to yours. Let's see. Halcyon Draconis. I probably butchered that. The first step to fixing wrongdoing is admitting it was a mistake. Now, would you figure out how to fix things? I agree with that. Ninjisk 8 Ordnance said, "Go off, man." That must have been while I was in the middle of a rant. Maybe you were in the middle of the rant. I don't know. One of us was in the middle of saying something good. Trump, Mixa Shah said, Trump trying to fix other countries while he can't fix his is kind of sad and funny at the same. That's the other thing. It's just so, like, again, I thought we all agreed on this. It was like, America first. We can't even run our own shite here, right? Like, our own country, our own economy, our own security is a giant mess. Especially if you're like, neither of us are border hawks, but if you're like a border hawk and you're like, it's like, well, then what do you think creating more refugees halfway across the world is going to do for the immigration crisis, man? Like, it's such short-term thinking. It's absolutely insane. And yeah, it's absolutely hypocritical to be like, can't balance the budget here, can't protect ourselves here, but yeah, we'll go and tell other countries how to do it right.
My God.
Absolutely insane. I'm curious, why do people on the left think having illegals is good? Okay, that's a conversation for another day. Billy Kelly said, no, he told you what he was going to do, and you bought into the crap he was giving to and about minorities and also the division I mean, you can go back and look. I was never one of these, like, we got to close the border types. That was never my thing. So, I mean, that might be true of others. I mean, it is true of others, but that was never a big thing. I just kind of thought they all suck on immigration. So, like, I just thought it was going to be within parity of every administration on immigration. So, I gargle with fire. Misogynist feminist is here. Hello. I thought you also asked later. Oh, she was looking for your YouTube channel, but she already found it. So good.
Oh, I'm offended. How dare she?
Dark Granite's in the comments. How you doing, Dark Granite? He said, yeah, how many times will we fall for it?
A bunch.
PSYOP works. Then he had a question here, which I'll answer here to finish this out. Jacob, what do you think about Angela McArdle and people like Ludwig Never Mises continuing to endorse Trump even now and continuing to play ball for the MAGAs? So on one hand, I understand that they feel like they still have some kind of position of influence to at least try to petition for pardons for political prisoners and to try to, like, at least speak some ideas into people who are in Trump's orbit to, like, try to push things in the positive direction. And I guess they feel, they shit on Trump too hardly on a policy level in the public, that's going to hurt their ability. Angela is the chair of the Mises Caucus now. If you go to the Mises Caucus, X page and Facebook page, they're not holding back going after Trump or any of that. So I don't think, it's not like she's turned the entire caucus into being like, just run cover for Trump 24/7 or anything. So I want to give her some sort of, like, understanding on that front. I just know her personally, and that's where she's coming from, just by my own evaluation. I do think, though, that I love them both, and I've told them both, and I think especially Austin, who I plan on having back on the show at some point, that, like, I think they get a little bit too irritated with those of us who are unwilling to kind of, like, compromise, especially on the foreign policy stuff and on the Israel stuff. That stuff's really important. We're not going to we're not going to just, like, look the other way at war and empire abroad because of some stuff going on domestically. So, I mean, yeah, those are my two thoughts on it. Like, I obviously don't agree insofar as I've seen probably more Austin than Angela. I guess Angela too. I think they're trying to sometimes provide some positive spin and try to be more charitable than I'm inclined to be, for sure. But I get that, and listen, I get where they're coming from, thinking that maybe they can provide some influence But I haven't talked to them in a little while. In my opinion, I think it's kind of like, listen, unless you got a couple projects that are like close to fruition and you think you can pull them off, like I know Angela's really big on like freeing the crypto prisoners, like Raj Over, Ian Freeman, others, and like, so I don't know, like I don't want to like be judging too hard, but at some point, I would just kind of stress to them and be like, have a line in the sand and really, appreciate that at some point, probably you need to abandon ship and realize you're not going to get any more good. You probably getting Ross free might have been as much water as you were going to squeeze out of that rock. So those are my thoughts. Also, Amity's in the chat. What's up, Amity? 2 podcasts in one. Could my Sunday night get any better? Well, speaking of 2 podcasts in one, we're going to go hop over onto Brett's show right now. So I'm going to close us out. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Make sure you like, make sure you subscribe. Yeah, I will talk to you guys on Brett's show on the other side. We'll be on there in a few minutes.